Abelard and Héloïse, a story some call romantic and even dare compare to Romeo and Juliet. But before you whip out the tissues, let's set the record straight. This isn't a romance. It's a masterclass in manipulation, power imbalance, toxic relationship 101, and societal expectations gone wrong. Let's set the stage. It's 12th century Paris. Abelard, a philosopher and theologian in his 30s, is basically the medieval equivalent of a rock star. Brilliant, famous, and egotistical. Héloïse, a teenage prodigy renowned for her intelligence and beauty in a world that barely acknowledged women's education. Her uncle, Canon Fulbert, was so proud of his niece that he invited Abelard to stay at his home to tutor her. Bad move. Abelard exploited Fulbert's trust and Héloïse's admiration, turning their intellectual bond into a forbidden romance. The age gap? Let's say he was in his late 30s, while she was in her late teens. Héloïse admired him, and Abelard? He used that admiration to groom her. The relationship started as an intellectual bond, but Abelard crossed every line, seducing her under the guise of mentorship. She fell for him, hard. He got her pregnant, and instead of publicly committing to her, he shipped her off to Brittany where she gave birth to their son, Astrolabe. Yes, he named their child after a scientific instrument. Eccentric, right? When Héloïse's uncle demanded they marry to restore her honor, Abelard reluctantly agreed, but only in secret. Why? Because in the medieval academic world, philosophers were held to an ideal of purity and celibacy. Marriage was seen as a distraction from intellectual pursuits and a threat to one's career. A public marriage would have shattered Abelard's reputation and derailed his career as a devoted scholar. Héloïse, blinded by loyalty, didn't just agree. She actively resisted marriage at first, insisting it would damage Abelard's career. Let that sink in. She was willing to sacrifice her own reputation to protect his. Now, you'd think he'd step up, right? No. Instead of appreciating her devotion, he went ahead and married her in secret, because nothing says true love like hiding your wife. But secrets don't stay secret for long. Fulbert, feeling deeply betrayed and furious about how Abelard had ruined Héloïse's future, retaliated in the most brutal way. He hired men to castrate Abelard. Talk about vengeance to the core. End of his career as a lover? Yes. End of his manipulation? Not even close. Instead of facing his failures, he pivoted to damage control. What's his solution? Convince Héloïse to become a nun. Why? Because he couldn't be a husband anymore, so she shouldn't be a wife. Forget love being a two-way street. This man turned it into a one-lane road, entirely about his ego. Héloïse, initially reluctant, eventually agreed, not out of desire, but out of blind devotion. She entered the convent, giving up her dreams of marriage and motherhood, while Abelard retreated into monkhood and rebranded himself as a tragic philosopher. Ironically, his castration made him the ideal scholar in the church's eyes, pure and free from worldly distractions. The man who seduced her walked away a hero in his own narrative, while she was left behind, heartbroken and forgotten. Let's pause here to appreciate the sheer audacity. He ruined her reputation, hid their marriage, and sent her to a convent to dodge his own scandal. Meanwhile, Héloïse didn't just fade into obscurity. As a nun, she became an abbess and a brilliant scholar in her own right. Yet her letters to Abelard reveal the truth. She didn't want the convent. She sacrificed everything for a man who took and took and took, leaving her with nothing. So why do some call this story romantic? Because Héloïse's loyalty was glorified in a world where a woman's worth was measured by her devotion to a man. Back then, her sacrifice wasn't seen as tragic. It was celebrated as noble. It's a reflection of a deeply unequal world. A man's ambition and mistakes excused, while a woman's sacrifice was lauded. Abelard's suffering? Spun into heroism. Héloïse's heartbreak? Barely an afterthought. Strip away the flowery language, and what remains is a tale of power imbalance, a woman's unreciprocated sacrifice, and a man's relentless selfishness. And the comparison to Romeo and Juliet? Honestly, it's an insult. Romeo and Juliet died for their love. Abelard lived on as a self-absorbed philosopher, while Héloïse endured a life of quiet, heart-wrenching devotion. In the end, their love letters became famous, sparking debates about philosophy, love, and loyalty. Héloïse's letters reveal her continued admiration and deep devotion to Abelard, as well as her resentment toward the life of a nun, a path she never truly chose. Abelard's letters, by contrast, often feel emotionally detached, framing their relationship through the lens of sin, regret, and the supposed spiritual growth born from their separation. But let's not sugarcoat it. This isn't a love story. It's a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the power imbalances that trap women and excuse men. Call it what it was: manipulation disguised as romance, power dynamics gone wrong, and a heartbreaking tale of a woman who deserved far better. Romantic? No way. Toxic? Manipulative? Absolutely.